I'm proud to be a part of the built environment industry, architecture, engineering and construction. Whenever I travel across the world, I always marvel at what we collectively achieve with our architecture and engineering projects. And Chile's no exception to that as well, particularly given the challenging natural environment that you operate within here. But it isn't an industry that is completely efficient or totally effective. And that's not a unique problem to Chile either. Within the UK, the government has been publishing reports on the condition of the construction industry for the last 80 years. Since 1934, we've been describing problems in the industry that haven't really changed until now. I recently delivered a presentation where I declared that I believed that I had the best job in the world. And it wasn't a joke, I was completely serious, because I believe now I'm part of an initiative and I'm part of a change in our industry where for the first time in those 80 years, we're achieving the improvement, we're achieving the changes, and we're addressing those problems that we've been describing for so long. And the opportunity I'd like you to all to consider is that you have the potential to be a part of that opportunity within Chile. And if you can be a part of such a dramatic and positive change, I suggest that you would all believe that you would have the best job in the world as well. I'll share a little bit now in the next few minutes about our experiences with training and education within that UK program. First of all, I'll give you a little bit of information to describe the situation in the UK and the problem that we faced. The biggest challenge that we had with training and education is that we, like the Plan BIM team, we're a very small team in the UK BIM task group. The core UK BIM task group was around 10 people. With people focused on training and education, there were 2 people. And our challenge was to devise a strategy for training and education for an industry of 3 million people in the UK. And those 3 million people were employed within 300,000 companies. So our approach, our methodology, first off, was to create a simple objective. We defined this goal over 5 years to achieve what we were calling level 2 BIM maturity for public projects by 2016, by this year. This year is our delivery year, our mandate year for the UK program. And to understand and inform our strategy for training and education, we needed to understand those organizations that had an interest in the education and training of our current and future professionals. We developed a map of all of the different organizations that would have an interest in this. And then we started to engage with leaders and advocates within those organizations that could work with us collaboratively to champion the education and training that would support our transformation in the UK. From that, we defined a strategy, and within that strategy, determined realistic responsibilities. Clearly, it would take us a very long time if the 2 of us were individually training classes of people to reach the 3 million. We needed to find a scalable strategy in order to reach so many people. So in order to support that, we developed some tools and guidance that would allow other people to develop courses, training, and other learning solutions that would help develop the capabilities of our industry. And then our focus became communication and engagement on an ongoing basis with the industry to support the rollout and the upskilling of our industry. To give you some idea of our context, a report was produced recently looking at skills for infrastructure within the UK, and it showed both a low level of productivity and a productivity that wasn't increasing year over year within construction. actually very similar to the shapes of curves that we've seen for the Chile situation as well. We're also predicting, with no other changes, a significant gap in the skills, in the number of skilled workers within our industry to support the intended construction and infrastructure development planned by the government over the next 10 years. Because as well as having an industry that isn't efficient and effective, we have an industry that doesn't always attract new professionals into careers in architecture, engineering, and construction. So one of our side goals was not just to improve the productivity of our industry, but also to attract new talent into the industry to address this shortfall. Carolina Brians just mentioned one challenge that you have in Chile regarding the low level of investment in training within the industry here. We have a similar problem too. A recent survey in the UK said that the average training received by an industry professional in the UK is 1.2 days per year. That's not very much time to learn a completely new way of working, an improved and effective way of working, maybe using new technologies and new processes. Looking at our ecosystem, it's also very complex. We have a fragmented industry with those 300,000 companies. We have a number of different client organizations, the public ministries, similar to here. We have professional institutions that manage the concerns, the interests of our architects, our engineers, and our constructors. We have other professional bodies responsible for skills within construction, and bodies that oversee the governance, the control of quality, such as the British Standards Institute. And then we have our academia, our universities, technical colleges, and secondary schools concerned with training our future generations of professionals. Looking specifically at our academic community, and I know that there are many representatives of universities in the room today, we formed a community called the BIM Academic Forum, which brought together more than 50 UK universities to work together to collaborate, to look at introducing BIM into our higher education courses across the country. And they produced a number of documents looking at the way that learning could be embedded in courses across all of the built environment disciplines, at undergraduate all the way through to higher education, masters and beyond. And also continued to monitor the situation of introduction of BIM into those courses. And they meet regularly to share ideas and help solve each other's problems so that we provide up-to-date courses. And those people that graduate in 3 years or 5 years' time from our universities have the right skills to take us forward and be more effective into the future. And we see now particularly a significant increase in the number of master's courses specifically devoted to BIM. And in fact, now I guest lecture on a number of those courses at universities such as UCL, Middlesex, and the University of Reading. One of the other things that we looked at as we developed our training and education strategy was the 4 stages of learning. This is quite a common model, and for those of you in learning or education may be familiar with this, where we start at the lower left corner of the diagram with something we call unconscious incompetence. I don't know how well that translates, but the simple way of describing that in English is people don't know what they don't know. They're not aware of the skills that they might need to learn. So the first stage of our education training strategy is awareness, it's communications. It's presenting at events such as this one so that people get an appreciation of the areas of new skills that they may need to develop in future. So now people are aware of what they need to learn. And this is where we bring more direct teaching and learning into the situation. People are becoming aware of those areas that they need to learn, and solutions are offered so that people can start to become trained in those areas. But that still is really just knowledge, and it still takes a lot of effort to perform an activity just based on that knowledge that you've learned. So then we look at more practical areas where people can apply that knowledge and work in a new way to build their skills as well. So our aim is to take people around the circle to become more effective. As we tried to communicate our strategy, we decided to divide our audience into three main areas. If we'd looked at professions, architect, engineer, civil engineer, constructor, building services engineer, we would have a very large scope to cover. It would be a very wide subject to describe. So we decided to break our audience down into three main categories. We would look at the strategic level, company CEOs and directors, people that were making strategic decisions to invest money, heads of our public ministries, politicians, and the such. Then we would look at the management level, those people that may be managing projects, project managers, and similar roles. And then the technician level, the technical level, that may be performing a specific technical role within our projects. I apologize that this diagram now gets very complicated, but what we decided to do was understand what we would do as the UK BIM Task Group, as our responsibility within each element of this diagram, whether we're considering our clients or industry on each side of the diagram, and whether we're concerned with the development of knowledge or the development of skills. And our decision, because of the small number of resources that we had in our team, was our direct engagement would be focused on building the skills of our public clients. And that's why I was working very closely with our Ministry of Defence, Education, Health and Justice. Because if clients can provide good, detailed requirements for our BIM projects, we found that industry will respond and are able to deliver a solution that meets those requirements. The key element of a successful strategy is a well-informed client providing good instructions to the industry. So we focused with a very direct consulting approach to build the skills of our clients. And then for the rest of the industry, we would provide tools so that they could help themselves. We helped an industry of training providers and educators develop courses that would provide industry with the skills that they needed. One of the tools that we developed was our website. We started off with a BIM Task Group website, and we've recently transitioned to our formal site, bimlevel2.org, which provides resources to anybody looking to move to a BIM-based way of working. We also developed a BIM learning outcomes framework, which would provide those people delivering or developing training, as well as those people looking to find the appropriate courses, a specification for what BIM means from a learning perspective. It's not particularly detailed. You're seeing the entire learning outcomes framework on the slide. It's about 30 to 35 objectives that we've defined. And we wanted to provide that as a common foundation that could be taken by universities and schools, professional training companies, and by the students that would be attending those courses as a cross-reference for the scope of the courses that they were delivering and receiving. Just to explain a little bit about what happened with those tools to show how scalable this model became. Taking our learning outcomes to begin with. From that learning outcomes, our skills body, CITB, developed standards for the education of 14 to 19-year-olds in BIM, this document here. And as well as being informed by our learning outcomes, it was also informed by courses already being delivered at secondary school on the built environment. From those standards documents, one of our qualifications organizations, City and Guilds, have delivered qualifications now that can be taken at schools to achieve a qualification in BIM at ages 15 through 18. And that was also informed by software vendors as well, who were making software available to those schools in order to support those courses. So from a small development of just a single tool to provide guidance, industry has taken that with the different responsibilities that organizations have and developed a scalable solution that enables qualifications to be delivered across our school system in the UK. Looking at those standards at 14 to 19, we're not expecting children to have the same level of expertise as current professionals, but we teach principles such as teamwork and collaboration. We teach the idea of managing information and to think about online security, probably something that students could learn a lot more about. Understanding a little bit about the implications of BIM on the built environment in general, and then teaching them specialist technical skills such as the use of software. And this is just a short example from a 14-year-old student in the UK on one of my courses, where she's designed a new school building for the school that she's attending. She's developed a 3D model. The head teacher provided the brief, the number of spaces that were required. It's a very small site, 60 meters by 60 meters. So the student decided to put an open space on the first floor so that the children could go outside when all of the other external space on site was going to be taken up by car parking. So the model itself may look quite simple to you, but it shows a level of decision making which I think is quite advanced for 14 years old. And also I should say a skill with the technology that was more advanced than me after about 1.5 hours. Further on from education and looking at our professional institutions, the Institution of Civil Engineers in the UK took our learning outcomes framework and mapped the learning outcomes from that framework to 2 different courses that they offer to their professional members. So as a professional member now, you can find the right course for your needs based on a common definition of the learning requirements. I want to come back to this problem that we experience about 1.2 days per year training. That seems like a really significant constraint. But actually, I don't think the problem's as bad as that. Because I think when we said in this survey training, people think about this, sitting in a classroom in front of an instructor or teacher, receiving formal training. And I think you can learn and acquire new skills in a much more diverse way now. Attending events, I think you've all realized the value of that, hopefully, in attending this event today. Certainly in the UK now, particularly at this time of year, almost every day there is a BIM event focused on a specific organization or discipline or solution. E-learning. This is an opening page of an e-learning site published actually by a client, High Speed 2 in the UK, a £50 billion project. I think probably now the biggest project in the UK, in Europe for civil engineering, has published a freely available set of e-learning that anybody can access. You need to register, but otherwise all of that training is being offered for free and you can take it at your own pace. BIMupskilling.com is the website for that. Books. Loads of books are being published. This is my BIM bookshelf on my desk in the office, along with a photo of my family. And I don't know if you have them here, but there is a BIM for Dummies book that's been published already now. There seems to be a Dummies book for almost every subject now. Video. The B1M is like the YouTube of BIM. If you want to understand a complex concept in 6 minutes in a video, then this site is for you. LinkedIn, I know that many of you use LinkedIn, and there are now, how many is that? Almost 700 BIM groups on LinkedIn alone. The great thing about a site like LinkedIn is you can have a very specialist group. So if you wanted to form an architects BIM group for Chile, then you could form that on LinkedIn and connect and discuss with different members of your professional community, even if they're in different parts of the country. Twitter. I know some of you have been tweeting today's event. I've been following the tweets. And as an example for this, just before a presentation I did last year, I posted a question 30 minutes before my presentation on Twitter. What advice would you give to a client starting on their BIM journey? And within 30 minutes, I received a huge amount of valuable information on the best way to deliver for a client starting on their journey. The great thing about a public site like Twitter is people will tell you whether the advice being offered is good advice or bad advice as well. So on this particular example, Tom is very quick to respond and he's offering his expertise, speak to me. And Duncan says, yes, Tom is an expert, he's a good person to talk to, but his services may come at a cost. Beer may be required. But you can see that in this example, though, that very, very quickly, and again, all of these responses were received within 30 minutes of a very specific question that I posted on Twitter. One final example of learning, and I took a quote from Mark Twain on this, because I think it's very relevant. Good judgment is the result of experience, and experience the result of bad judgment. We learn the most from our mistakes. The challenge that we have in our environment is we're not usually in a position where making mistakes is a good thing. It can be hugely expensive, or worse, it can have a serious impact on somebody's health. Always the best situation to be trying and making mistakes on live projects. But there are ways of replicating that experience in a safe environment, and design competitions are an excellent example of that. In this series of Builder live events, a client brief was delivered to teams from across the world who were given 48 hours to prepare a detailed design response to the brief. And I've been amazed at the huge amount, not only of results, of deliverables that have been achieved through this, but the amount of learning that these teams have done on new technologies, on new ways of working collaboratively. They've made their mistakes in a safe environment, and they can apply that learning to a live project in the future. We're also developing certification to validate the skills that our professionals have. Part of the challenge at the moment is certification has become such a success in the UK that there are many, many organizations offering BIM certificates. So one of the things that we're developing now is an accreditation program that will verify the quality of the certification programs that exist. So that when a client sees that their suppliers have a certain BIM certificate, they can have confidence in knowing that that certificate has value. And there are many, as I said, certification programs for professional institutions, software vendors, and others. So I hope that that gives you a snapshot of the approach that we took in the UK. That we weren't in a dramatically different situation than you are at the start of your Plan BIM journey. And that we're hoping that the lessons we learned and the mistakes that we made will mean that you will have a more successful and a more rapid adoption of BIM and unlock those benefits and be a part of that generation that achieves that success and that transformation of the industry. Thank you.